Hello, my name is Kaine Agary, and the channel is Ruby Woman. You're welcome to Ruby Woman. On Ruby Woman, what we do is to bring to you notable women from across the world. Yes, we meet them, we interview them, and get to know their views about a lot of issues affecting our societies around the world. So you will be meeting exciting women, activists, literary personalities, that is writers, female writers, especially African female writers, and who knows, female writers from the diaspora. Yes, we'll bring them all to you, so that as women we need to have our own say. And what's that perspective from a woman about that trending issue we'll be talking about? Here today I will be checking off with a very interesting personality. You'll get to meet her when I bring her on board. But please note that Ruby Woman is for all of us women. So do you have a woman in mind, a notable woman who is doing something wonderful for the world, for Africa, for Nigeria, wherever you are in the world? Please let us know about that woman. Let us know about that woman, and I promise you we will bring her on board. We will talk to her, and we will get her to open up and to talk about her views about our world. That's what this is all about. Now, Mirac Med, MERAKMED, Mirac Med at rocketmail.com. That's the email to send messages to. You have anything at all that you want us to know about, or any woman you want us to contact, yes, just send us the information and we'll do the rest. So sit back now and meet my first guest on the program. You're welcome.
Me? Okay.
So how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
My name is Kaine Agary,
Okay.
and I'm happy to meet you today.
So am I. We've been chatting on LinkedIn, so it's good to meet you.
Yeah. I have a few of my students here.
Okay.
Yes, who are quite interested in your work.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm the
Hi. Hi. I don't know how this works, but you know, I wish I could be there. Unfortunately, I'm not in Nigeria, so this was the best I could offer.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll still do it when you're back. We'll
Okay.
bring you here, because
Okay.
a lot of my students are excited about your work.
Oh, good. Thank you.
By the way, this is being recorded, and it's
Yes.
going to, like I told you,
Mhm.
and it's going to go on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yes, and subsequently we'll use some of the materials in my classes.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start this way. I'm so excited.
let's meet you. Let's meet you. Let's know who is. By the way, is it Kaine?
Kaine, yes.
Kaine Agary.
Yes.
All right.
Kaine Agary.
Let's meet Kaine. Who is Kaine Agary?
Wow. Where do I start? Well, I'm a young woman from the Niger Delta. I have a background in policy, public policy. I'm also a lawyer. And I have an interest in social and economic development, and that's how I got into writing.
Wow,
that's like
great.
The brief.
All right,
that's me.
That's good enough for us for now. Did you set out to be a writer, or did it just come along the way?
It came along the way. I think it started when I was doing a lot of research writing, and also for my degree in public policy, I had to do a lot of writing. And so I started out doing more academic writing, and the fiction writing was almost out of necessity in a way, I think, because I felt that a lot of the things I was writing for academic research institutes were important things to share with a larger population. And I felt that writing fiction would be one way that I could convey those messages. So that's how my fiction work came about.
So in essence, you're trying to tell us that writing fiction helps in broadening, one's horizon, and in bringing to the fore some very critical issues.
Definitely. I mean, yes, I always used to use the example of, I don't know if people know Michael Moore, Fahrenheit. He's a documentary filmmaker, and he did the documentary called Fahrenheit 9/11. And Fahrenheit 9/11 covered the arms trade, the global arms trade. And it was fine. And, he's a political figure. So there's some audiences that documentary didn't reach. But then around the same time, a blockbuster Hollywood movie came out called Lord of War, I think it was called, with Nicolas Cage. And it covered the same subject. And so I believe that, there have to be different avenues for reaching different audiences. So there are the academics who you will reach with your academic work. And then there are the other audiences who you have to find other ways to reach. And maybe that is fiction writing, maybe that is film, whatever it is. We have to find different ways of passing on the messages that we want to pass on. So while fiction and creative works entertain, sometimes you can educate using those avenues. And so that was the push for me to write my book. Also, I think reading Ken Saro-Wiwa's A Month and a Day also influenced me to try and write fiction, because he says somewhere, I think in the beginning of the book, about discovering his talent to write and deciding to use it as a voice for his people and the struggle of his people. And so that inspired me to use all of the information that I had got as a researcher, as a research writer, and put it into fiction.
That's good. That tells me that for you, writing is what simply comes to you as a matter of course. Whereas some people are of the opinion that being creative, it's something that you're born with. It's not something you can learn. But from, your experience now, it's about skills. It's about having the knowledge. It's also about knowing what to write and how to write it.
I think, well, I don't know about being a natural born writer, but I come from a family of, and a lot of us do, I come from a family of great storytellers. When we're all around during the holidays, we would tell stories. And my grandmother talked a lot about her childhood days and history and recounting information. So a lot of us are good storytellers. It's just now putting it in a different form, which is writing, which is, writing is just storytelling, finding the story you want to tell and making it interesting for whoever is going to read it. So while my formal training is more technical, the storytelling part is, you could say innate. It's just, it was, for me, it was just telling a story. And all the fiction I've written since then, it's just telling a story. As we say in Port Harcourt, just gisting with your friend. But it's a longer gist in writing.
Exactly.
So that's what it is.
Exactly. Well, as a scholar once said, Africans are natural storytellers.
Yes, I agree.
Now let's come to the issue of gender. Mm-hmm. What's your view of the gender discourse in Africa? Is it robust enough?
I don't think so, but I think it's getting there. I think there's a lot of effort in bringing out issues to the fore, in having the discussions that need to be had about gender and about our place in society, about the opportunities that women are given or denied. So even though I don't think we're where we want to be, I think there's a consciousness. And there's discussion going on. Unfortunately, especially in Nigeria, we seem to take, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, or 3 steps back. You have administrations that have been very gender forward, especially in their appointments and in the participation of women in governance and in policy. And then you have other administrations who practically just ignore all of that. But it's not a discussion only for African women. You see it here in America even, especially with this presidential round of elections that have just come up. You've heard the last presidential hopeful for the Democratic Party has just dropped out. The last female has just dropped out, Elizabeth Warren. And so the discussion, it's everywhere. People do side-by-side pictures of Obama's cabinet and Trump's cabinet. And you found a lot more women in Obama's cabinet than you find in Trump's cabinet. So it's a discussion everywhere. It's ongoing. Of course more pronounced in Africa because we haven't made enough, should I say, legislative progress as there have been in some other places, but I think it's a global discussion.
So did you set out to to address this issue when you wrote your popular texts, Yellow Yellow? Did you set out to write a gender,
yes,
based work?
Yes, definitely. At the time when I was doing research in the Niger Delta, a lot of the media coverage of the Niger Delta problems were centered on the men, the Niger Delta militants, the violence. It was all about the men. But there was very little talk about the impact it was having on the women in the Niger Delta. The women were bearing the brunt of the violence, the destruction of the social order. There were things that were happening to women that nobody was talking about. So it was important for me to at least document some of that. And that was one of my objectives, writing Yellow Yellow, because I would meet people who weren't from the Niger Delta, and their lens was focused on the militant boys and the men and what was happening to the men. And there was very few media coverage or any discussions about what the women were going through.
Yeah, quite interesting. And that also takes me to the issue of minorities. That particular text, has something to do with the minorities. The same thing, that's in Nigeria. You earlier on talked about the American election, ongoing and all that. And still, we don't have a conscious effort of people bringing in the issue of minorities. What do you think that would do for the African, the issues around the Africans and all the troubles we're having here in relation to the international?
So are you talking about minorities in Nigeria?
Minorities in the world.
The whole thing about minorities anyway is power. It's always a power play. He who has the power dictates what happens. And usually the majority have power, so they put their people in place. They are unaware of the issues or the challenges of the minorities, and for the most part don't really care what those issues and challenges are, because they don't affect them, and don't care to make any changes because it's not directly their issue. So it's always a power play. Who is in power sets the tone. So if the majority is in power, then they set the tone for what's happening with the minorities. So wherever you are, it could be economic, it could be social, it could be ethnic. It's always a power play. Who the majority has the power and the minority is just struggling for existence. It's almost an existential fight for the minority everywhere, because everything, whether laws are passed or it all depends on the majority and what the majority wants.
And as women, we're always at the other side in the minority.
Yeah, especially, and which is why, in the early, in 99, 2000, when there was all this talk about, the new democracy, a lot of the research I did was on women's participation in politics, because if we're not in it, then our needs are not being talked about or addressed. If it's just the men who are making policy, who are deciding what happens, they don't know the struggles of the woman. They can't speak for the women. So without women's participation, you can't have broad policy. You can't have policy that makes the kind of change that we need in society to elevate the status of the woman. So it's, you know.
Yeah, that brings me to this issue of women attitude, you know, of women, especially in the larger gender discourse. Today, in contemporary times, you notice that young women are not really so interested, you know, in holding their own, in being, you know, in the forefront of the developmental issues and all that, except for a few elites. Whereas in the past, the generation of our foremothers, the Professor Bolanle aware of this world, you know, they were really out there in the public space, you know, saying their, you know, their mind, letting their heart out, you know, and all that, and being participating effectively. But today, probably the influence of postmodernism, I don't know. So I want to ask, what's your take on these post-feminist ideas and postmodernism as it's affecting the gender discourse in contemporary time?
I think, for me, I think it's a mix of issues. For one, there's a general despondency across the board, whether it's for women, for, you know, gender issues or economic issues. There's just a general despondency, like, you know, everyone has thrown their hands up in the air, like, what can we do? We've been saying all of this for so long, nothing changes. So you just go with the flow. Secondly, I also think religion plays a role in the expectations of women. You know, the man is the head of the house, and if you're too vocal, you know, you have women on both sides, both Christian and Muslims, and when they're very vocal, you see, especially on social media, you see comments, oh, go and cook for your husband, oh, I'm sure this one is not married, and, you know, things like that. So you have, I think it's just a whole mix of things. It's a general despondency of where society is in Nigeria now, where I don't, you know, in some ways there's no rhyme or reason to the way things happen. I think back in, you know, let's say 40 years ago, people could move ahead, could get their points across on merit. You could get your platform on merit. If you had something to say, people would listen to you. But right now, there are just so many other things at play that cloud the voices of people who have something to say. There's politics, there's ethnicity, there's religion, there are all kinds of things, issues that have now befuddled the discourse. So it makes it difficult. I don't think there's one particular thing that has affected the gender discourse in Nigeria. I think it's a whole mix of different things that's going on.
Do you think there's a way we can, you know, bring it down to the general public to be focused? In the US, for example, the hashtag #MeToo is still trending, and people are, you know, riding on that to bring to the fore the gender issues, the abuse, you know, and all the rest of them. And it seems that it's expanding this, you know, the scope of the gender discourse. So it's like women are having, you know, better opportunities, better platforms to have their say. But that seems not to be the case in Africa.
It takes action, though. It takes action. Yes, there's a movement, But there's also been a lot of action in the sense that a lot of people have taken things to the courts to get judgments, to get pronouncements about the state of things. So beyond the movement, there has to be action, which is something that we generally don't do in Nigeria. We do a lot of talk, but we don't challenge. There are very few things that we challenge in the courts. I know a few years ago, less than 5 years ago, a woman took the inheritance laws of the Igbos to the courts, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court said, no, you can't discriminate against male and female children in distribution of property. So it takes action, and that's where it's either we don't trust the court system, or we think the process is too long, or whatever it is. We don't go beyond the advocacy to taking action. Yes, we talk about it a lot. There's a lot of discussion. There are a lot of seminars, but we need people who are going to take action and go to the courts and say, okay, you decide and tell us how the law acts in this situation. And so we know going from now on, this is what can happen. And once the courts decide, it's a threat. Everybody else is now on notice that the courts have decided this, and this action is not acceptable. But if we just talk about it and we just talk about it, nothing happens. That's my belief.
Maybe we need more write-ups, more writers like you, to talk more about such issues. And that brings me to the issue of publishing. You are in the field of publishing now.
I was.
The talk show.
I was.
You were.
I was. What? Yes.
So what are you now?
I'm a lawyer.
I know.
I don't do
so you're back
publishing. Sorry?
Legal. Are you back fully into the legal business?
Yes. I still write, but I'm not in the business of publishing anymore.
Wow. Because I was going to ask you what influenced your interest in, and maybe I should still ask, what influenced your interest in publishing in the first place?
Frustration with the publishers at the time. I felt I was getting the runaround from a couple of publishers, and I was just, I was getting the runaround from a couple of people who said they were interested in the story, they were interested in doing the book, but then there was no action. 1 year later, 2 years later, nothing was happening. So I decided, well, let me do this by myself. And then there were, at the time also, remember that I think there was someone who said to me, it was one of the big publishers at the time who said to me, books don't sell. Books don't sell in Nigeria. So, unless it's a textbook, nobody is going to be buying these books. And so I thought, okay, well, I might as well just gamble on myself and see how it goes. And so I did the whole process from getting an editor, typesetting the book, doing everything that I needed to do step by step on my own to get it published.
A disservice to women, although especially young women who probably would have been looking up to you at least to join your publishing outfits to get themselves published.
No, but there's so many publishing houses now. It's not the same landscape as it was in 2006,
There is still the
2007.
gender issue. There is still the gender issue.
You think so?
I know so. I know
Wow.
so.
Yeah, it's a hard business though. It's a very hard business to do in Nigeria, and I got tired.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
the truth.
If
It's
you
a,
seem to have
because
run away.
you're doing everything from concept to market. Whereas in more developed markets, there are people who are in, the people who are in different areas of the chain, from concept, then you hand it over to a distributor, and the distributor, takes care of all the logistics of getting it around, around to the different stores, getting your money back. Getting your money back is getting return on sales was a huge wahala. So
Wow. I think
our distribution channels are very I was working on something. Unfortunately, by the time I got to that point, I'd run out of steam, I'd run out of resources, so I couldn't capitalize on it as much as I wanted to. But I always say to people, I still think it's a model that can work, which was the partnership that we had with the post office, the Nigerian Postal Service.
All right.
Because the post office has two things that no other distributor has. They have warehousing and they have transport. They're in the business of transporting things around. So they had those two things. And one of the places where I got a lot of sales from through the post office, I never would have dreamt that I would get sales from there. It was a place in River State called Eleme. I mean, that's not a place where I ordinarily would even go to look for a bookshop to sell my books in. But through the post office, we got sales from there. So if, it came very late in the process. It came when I was just tired of the whole thing. But I think it's because it's beneficial to the post office and it's beneficial to the bookseller as well, because the post office gets their cut as a distributor, and the bookseller gets their money. So I think that's a platform that could work if somebody capitalizes on it. But logistics for books is a challenge.
Let's hope someone will brave the odd and come up with something soon. This is yellow.
Yes.
In this text, we're confronted with female characters who are strong, independent, and who are able to hold their own in the patriarchal world. Now, what informs the creation of these female characters?
A lot of the characters based on women that I grew up around in Port Harcourt. A lot of the women I grew up around were very strong women. My grandmother was one. My mother is a very strong woman. So I grew up around a lot of very, very independent, strong-willed women. So that, and even just around the neighborhood, you would hear in Port Harcourt society, you would hear about women, things that women were doing. Across from the house where I grew up, there was a woman who worked in customs, and this was late 70s, early 80s. She was the first woman I saw riding a motorbike. She used to ride a motorbike to work. That was how she went to work. She was in customs. She was a huge woman, and she always had problems with public transportation. So she decided, I'm not dealing with this. She bought herself a motorcycle and she would ride around town on her motorbike. So I grew up around a lot of strong women who carried their own, were some of them married, very respected by their husbands, mutual respect. So yeah, that was what I saw. And then I almost felt at the time like we were losing some of that independence in our, the cultural structure was changing a bit. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So in contemporary times now, would you say that female discrimination and gender equality is still a concern? Have we gone so far now into the gender discourse that things we can take things for granted?
No, I don't think so. I think we're still a long ways off. I mean, there's still issues that we make light of. Like you brought up the Me Too issue. There's still workplace discrimination. There's still sexual harassment. You read about it every day in the papers about, students in universities or employees in different corporate organizations. You read about people who are afraid to get pregnant when they get a job. So we're still facing a lot of issues. And like, again, I said, when there's no action, nothing changes. Because if you have a corporate organization that is challenged for unlawful termination of an employment based on discrimination, and they have to pay a hefty fine or face some crazy liability for that, it puts the other corporate organizations on check that this is not acceptable. We have laws that protect against these things, but until somebody takes action on the laws and takes a matter to court, nothing happens. And, people get away with abuses. People get away with violence. People get away with discrimination because we don't take action. It's either somebody saying, "Oh, leave it," or "Leave it to God," or "Don't worry about it." All kinds of. I remember in the 80s, when my mom was facing harassment in her job as a civil servant, the late Ganifa Aremi of blessed memory, she went to him and he took up her case, and just a letter from his chambers put them on notice. I mean, they didn't even go to court or anything. It didn't get that far, but just a letter from his office. And this was in the early 80s, about 83 or so. Put him on notice, put the particular person, the whole board got involved, and he was either demoted or terminated or whatever. But she took action. That's that's the point I'm trying to make. Is we just can't complain about things. We have to take action.
Take action. So the fact that we're still talking about this, right now, doesn't mean that as African women, we have not benefited at all from the idea and the pursuit of feminism.
I think we have. Sadly, a lot of it is on paper. We have domesticated some international agreements. There's some laws that have been put in place, but it's still not.
No action yet.
Yes, no action. It's like there's no teeth to it yet. It's there, but it's just lying with no. It hasn't shown us its teeth. Because sometimes with law, you have to see the law in action to see whether it is adequate or not. You know, it's when the law is tested that you know, okay, yeah, this works. This is what the framers might have thought, but in actuality, it doesn't really cover all the possible situations that could arise. So maybe the law needs to be amended in this way or that way. But we have to challenge things. We have to challenge the laws that exist to know.
So maybe from all you have said now, it's as if contemporary female writers in Africa today probably need to change their style of writing, don't you think? Mm-hmm. So at least encourage women to take action, because I mean, so far we have reached that conclusion that the major challenge we have as African women is that we're not taking action.
Yeah, I think not just the writers. I think, you know, unfortunately, we don't have as much public interest litigation anymore in Nigeria. You know, the things that people like Gani Fayemi did for human rights in Nigeria, I think we need more. And it takes resources, I guess. We need more women to litigate these public interest, you know, women interest issues in the courts to get some pronouncement about things. You have some organizations that are reactionary, meaning that they take up cases and provide some kind of support, either for battered women or for abused children. But we need more public interest litigation with respect to women's rights and women's issues. Of course, there's a sort of what's the word? I don't want to say disillusionment, but there's some wariness with the judiciary at the moment. The time it takes, the uncertainty of the fairness of the judiciary and things like that. But nevertheless, I don't think we should stop. You know, you keep pressing on. We see that it works. It took Gani many years before he could even get to the point where the courts agreed that a non-interested party had locus to bring such human rights cases to court. So,
and now that vibrant lawyers like you are, you know, are leaving the country, so who do we look up to now? I mean, isn't that the major problem with us here? I mean, the brain drain, the fact that, you know, our elites who should know better and who should have the strong local standing to fight, you know, the struggle, are living in droves. What do we do about this?
That's a hard question.
Yes. We need to face.
Yes, we do need to face it. It's a tough question because, you know, I do understand the frustration of a lot of young professionals. You know, I do understand whether it's professional frustration, whether it's social frustration, whether it's the security challenges. There are a lot of there are lots of frustrations that one faces in
Even
Nigeria.
writers are not here anymore. They
have to eat. They have to eat to survive. I think, you know, the one of the issues with Nigeria right now is I described it a little more eloquently to someone recently, but you know, there was a time where you could advance based on your own hard work and your motivation, and you know, based on the strength of your intellect. Now it happens, but it's more of an uphill struggle.
I get that.
You know, I mean, there was a time when if you came out of school with your first class or your 2-1, you know where you're going to go. The employers are looking for you to, but now it's not guaranteed. You know, I read a story recently about some guy who, some years ago, there were a group of them who took an exam for scholarships, and they passed. And it was supposed to be a guaranteed situation. If you pass, then, you know, you're getting the scholarship. And new government comes into power, the whole thing is scrapped.
Wow.
Luckily for them, well, and this is back to what you're complaining about, they got scholarships from outside. So of course, when they finish their studies, they're going to stay true and loyal to the people who funded them. You know, so
well, someday probably.
Yeah,
We'll
I mean, but the important thing is to keep the yes, and to keep the discussion going so that we're still hearing it. We still understand that it's an issue we have to deal with. We're thinking about it. We're thinking about it in the way we vote. We're thinking about it in the people we throw up for political office. You know, it's in our consciousness that things need to change, and then maybe we can scrutinize, you know, more deeply the people who are in positions of power.
I would love to go on and on. There are so many questions here, so many, and my students are here with their questions, but our time is up.
Okay.
Because I promised 30 to 45 minutes.
No problem.
We're just about 35 minutes shy of 45 minutes, 35 seconds shy of 45 minutes now. So if
your time is not constrained, we could do up to like the hour, but it's up to you.
All right. Fine. So let me go this way then. I want to talk about the issue of the influence of female writers. I chipped it in a little earlier on. There are so many, writers coming up now in Africa, but you notice that several of them, at least about 90% of them, are in the diaspora. So it's to see the socioeconomic situation in the country or in the continent seems to be stifling, ideas. And yet, writing is all about experiences. It's all about what you feel. So, do you think there's a way we can address these issues? And I'm looking at platforms that are digital platforms that are, with us now. Young women are making use of, all sorts, phones, social media, and all the rest of that, to express themselves. So do you think there's a way we can, go about aggregating, ideas of young female writers and putting it on the digital platforms, in spite of the fact that it's still very, very slow here in Africa? If we want to start #MeToo here, it will be dead on arrival because there'll be no NEPA, electricity will be off, and all that. But then, do you think we can hope to go this way?
I think I think there's some things going on right now in Abuja, in Lagos. You have people like Lola Shonei, you have people like Bibi Bakare Yusuf, who are putting things together and to keep things going. And so it's happening, probably not on the scale that we would like, but I think there are people making an effort. So we can only hope that it grows and continues to attract more resources, because at the end of the day, a lot of things come down to economics. So I hope that they have enough support to sustain and expand the things that they're doing towards providing platforms for women writers and young writers.
What about bringing together writers in the diaspora, young writers, African female writers in the diaspora?
I think they're doing stuff. I think especially Lola's Ake Festival. I think she brings in people, and it's a huge gathering every year. I've attended a couple of them some years ago when she used to host in Ife, but I'm not sure where they're hosting it these days. I think the last one might have been in Lagos. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But I think, okay, I think they're making yeah, sorry, not in Ife, in Abeokuta. I think they're making efforts, to address some of these issues.
Finally, let me ask you, the search for nomenclature for the African gender idea, it has shown that, like some people have said, it's like there's lack of unity among women in Africa. We've not been able to aggregate all our ideas into, a monolithic. Well, I don't know. What do you have to, because you have womanism, you have African feminism, you have Africana feminism, you have Nego feminism, so many. And none of them has been able to, really pull its weight considerably. What do you have to say about this? Unity amongst women.
I'm not sure that I'm into, all of this nomenclature. It's not something that is peculiar to women. And every time, there's always some kind of discussion or attempt to portray the disunity with women, even in male issues. Even when we were at the verge of independence, fighting against colonialism, you had negritude and tigritude. And there's always going to be a difference of opinions, a difference of approach. It's human. So it's not something peculiar to women. But I think regardless of what you call yourself, there's some basic truths that we must agree on, regardless of whether you are, whatever you call yourself. They're just some basic things. One of them is equal access, equal rights, equal opportunity. And it doesn't matter what you call yourself. I think we should try and stay away from all of these things, all of these nomenclature, as you call them, that try to divide us, and find we all have common ground on certain things. And so find those places where we have common ground, and let's start with that. And then, we can fight the details later. But if we're fighting before we even make any progress, we're not going to get anywhere. I think it's too early in our struggle to be saying, to be dividing ourselves into groups, different warring groups, ideological groups. At the end of the day, the basic, thing is equal access, equality, equity, injustice, and yeah.
Good talk. What do we expect from you in the not so distant future? Are we expecting another book?
I've been sitting on another book for a while now, trying to figure out what I want to do with it. But it's there. And because I've been sitting on it for so long, it keeps changing form. I don't know when it's going to come out, but at some point it will.
We're looking forward to it.
Yes.
Whatever happened to Detox Shop?
Oh, well, it was an organization I was running with my cousin, and after he passed away, it kind of fell apart. So yeah, it doesn't really exist anymore.
Wow. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of young women that must have been looking forward to getting to work with that organization. Can we expect soon you probably will resuscitate it, at least for the sake of younger ones that are coming up, that are aspiring?
Well,
right.
the organization or structure doesn't exist anymore, but I'm still available as a resource to people. I've been available, and I've helped a lot of other people in my personal capacity, not as an organization. So I don't think it's a total loss, because I still have all of the experience that I gained from running that organization that I've shared freely with anyone who has approached me to ask me questions about how to do certain things, especially in publishing. So it's not it's not a total loss.
It would have been nice if we could expect you to have something like that even where you are now. Maybe it's something you can consider in the future.
Maybe, but it won't be exactly the same thing. I mean, I'm at a different point in my life. I have different visions for life happens, things change,
sure.
You're just in a different place. So it may happen, but it probably won't be exactly what it was. It's just natural evolution of me and of where my life is. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity.
No problem. Thank you for reaching out to me.
Yeah, I hope someday soon you will be in Nigeria.
Mhm.
And when you are making that preparations, please have us in mind, because we would
I
like to
will.
have you in Ile-Ife.
I will. I will. I will definitely. Thank you so much.
All right. So
And
on
so, are
behalf
you going
of
to email
my...
me your
Oh, sure, I will.
your YouTube channel, the link to
All
your
right,
YouTube
I will.
channel? Okay.
I
All right.
will. I will
Hello.
do that.
Hello. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Same here.
And from
Or
your
maybe
interview,
next time we can figure out another way to do like to get everyone involved.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
and thank you for walking the talk.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's nice to meet you.
Same
Well
here.
done.
Thank
Bye.
you so much,
Bye-bye.
Kaine Agary.
Bye.
Looking forward to seeing you some other
Yes,
time.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take